You're killing her, Martha. With every word you say. David's voice trembled, not from fear, but from years of swallowed rage. He stood in the kitchen doorway, fists clenched, while his mother, Martha, wiped an already spotless countertop as if she hadn't heard him. On the floor lay the shattered remains of a porcelain plate, the last gift Grandma Edith had given before she went into the hospital. That very plate had hung on the wall for 20 years, a silent reminder that this family once knew how to love. It's none of your business, Martha snapped, still not looking at him. And don't you dare tell me how to treat my own daughter. She's your daughter, not your maid. David stepped forward, and the crunch of ceramic under his boots sounded like a gunshot. Martha finally turned. Her face, carved by time, lined deeply around the mouth, eyes sharp with cold judgment, showed no softening. You don't know what you're talking about. Now leave. Don't interfere while I'm making dinner for your sister. She's upset enough as it is. Upset? David let out a short, bitter laugh. Did you call her a failure again? Or maybe incapable of keeping a man? Or perhaps unworthy of the warden's name? Martha pressed her lips tight, but said nothing. That was the heart of their family. Words thrown like stones, silence wielded like a blade. The Warden family lived in an old but well-kept house on a hill, shaded by maples and elms. The house had belonged to Grandpa Henry, a quiet, fair man. After he died, everything changed. Martha, widow and mother of 2 grown children, transformed overnight from a caring wife into a tyrant with impeccable taste and an iron grip. She controlled everything, how her children dressed, who they dated, even how they spoke. And in her eyes, their choices were almost always wrong. Liza, the younger daughter, had moved back home 3 weeks ago, not because she wanted to, but because she had nowhere else to go. Her divorce from Mark had been quiet, nearly scandal-free, but it left behind a void no new wardrobe or seaside trip could fill. She'd rented an apartment, but within a week she realized she couldn't bear the loneliness, not now, not after everything. So, without telling her brother, she packed 2 suitcases and her dog and returned to her mother's house. Martha opened the door with a look as if Liza had brought plague with her. Back again? Another failure? She'd asked. Hi, Mom. How are you? Don't dodge the question. Are you back because you failed? Since then, every morning began with an inspection. What Liza wore, how she made coffee, why she hadn't cleaned the bathroom. Everything was grounds for criticism. Everything proved, in Martha's eyes, that Liza would never learn to be a real woman. And David. David lived in the next town over. He came on weekends, brought groceries, fixed leaky faucets, and stayed silent. He knew, if he spoke up, war would erupt. But today, he couldn't stay quiet. Not after seeing Liza sobbing in the bathroom, forehead pressed to the mirror as if trying to erase her own reflection. You don't understand, Liza said later, when David found her on the back porch, sitting on the old bench beneath the apple tree. Her hands shook, her eyes were red-rimmed. She's not cruel. She's just hurting. Dad left too soon. And after that, everything fell apart. That's not an excuse, David replied, sitting beside her. Pain doesn't give you the right to hurt others. What if she feels broken herself? She looked at him, and in her gaze was a weariness older than Martha herself. David sighed. He'd always been the protector. As kids, if someone teased Liza, he stepped in. If she feared the dark, he'd stay in her room all night. But now the enemy lived under the same roof, and fists wouldn't help. Why don't you leave? He asked gently. You could. Go where? She gave a hollow laugh. I have no job. No savings. Mark took almost everything legally, but still. I'm in a void. And here, at least the walls are familiar. The walls don't love you, Liza. But you do. She placed her hand on his knee. And that's why I'm here. He fell silent. Leaves rustled in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The next day, Martha announced a family dinner, a full ritual. Tablecloth, silverware, 3 appetizers, even candles. Just like the old days. Only the old days couldn't be brought back. Liza wore a simple dress, not flashy, not sloppy. Martha took one look and winced. Meeting someone after dinner? Or did you just not realize this was a special night? Mom, it's just dinner with family, Liza said softly. In this family, there's no such thing as just dinner. Martha set a tray of baked trout on the table. Do you even know how long I spent on this sauce? Of course not. You never appreciate anyone's effort. David closed his eyes. A tight knot formed in his chest. Mom, enough. Just enough. And now you're her lawyer? Martha turned on him, eyes blazing. You've always taken her side, even when she dropped out of college, even when she threw her career away for that accountant. His name was Mark, Liza corrected. And he was a good man. Just not right for me. A good man doesn't leave his wife with nothing. He didn't leave me. We split everything fairly. Fairly? He got the house, the car, the job. You got a suitcase and that pathetic little dog. Liza stood abruptly. I'm leaving. Where? To Sarah's? She's got 3 kids and a mortgage. Or Jessica. She can barely pay her bills. You're not going anywhere, Liza. Not until you learn what real responsibility means. Responsibility. Liza stared at her mother, and in her eyes flared not tears, but fury. You call this strength? Humiliating your daughter? Mocking her choices? You think that makes you strong. It makes me realistic. No. It makes you lonely. Silence fell over the table like a shroud. Martha went pale. For a fleeting second, something flickered in her eyes, fear? Shame? But it vanished behind her familiar mask of ice. Get out, she said. And don't come back until you understand what it means to be truly responsible. Liza didn't reply. She simply walked out. No slammed door. No shouting. Just gone. David found her leaning against her car, sitting on the hood with her knees drawn up. I don't have Sarah's keys, she said without looking at him. And even if I did, I don't want to be a burden. Stay with me, he offered. I've got a guest room. And there's an opening at the office, project coordinator. You'd be perfect. She looked at him with gratitude but shook her head. I don't want to hide, David. I want to understand why she's like this. Because she's afraid, he said quietly. Afraid we'll leave. That she'll lose control. And to her, that's worse than death. But we wouldn't leave. We already did, Liza. A long time ago. She just refuses to see it. A week passed. Martha didn't call. Didn't text. The house stayed shuttered, curtains drawn. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. Warden hasn't even picked up her paper. David visited every day. She greeted him in silence, served lunch, asked stiff questions about work. He answered. And stayed quiet. Between them now lay an invisible wall built of hurt, unsaid words, fear of speaking too much. Then, on a Wednesday, the unexpected happened. Martha fell. Not inside, in the driveway, taking out the trash. Luckily, Mrs. Clayton from across the street saw her and called 911. When David rushed to the hospital, Liza was already there, sitting in the hallway, gripping a paper cup of coffee. How is she? He panted. Mild concussion. Dehydration. Nothing life-threatening. But the doctor said her blood pressure's dangerously high, and her heart's under severe strain. David nodded, feeling the ground slip from beneath him. She asked for you, Liza added. When she woke up, the first thing she said was, Where's Liza? They exchanged a look. And for the first time in years, understood each other without words. Martha lay in the hospital bed, pale, fragile. Her usually strong hand trembled on the sheet. You're both here, she whispered when she saw them. I thought you wouldn't come back. We're your children, Mom, David said, stepping closer. We always come back. She closed her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. We know, Liza said, taking her hand. But you did. Deeply. Martha didn't open her eyes. But a tear slid down her cheek. Forgive me, she whispered. I just don't know how to be any other way. You can learn, David said gently. We'll help you. 3 days later, Martha was discharged. David and Liza brought her home, to the house that had been both fortress and prison. The first few days were awkward. Martha tried to command again, but her voice shook, and her words rang hollow. Liza didn't snap back. She just did things her way. And David. David finally began to speak, openly, honestly, without fear. "You don't have to be perfect, Mom," he said one evening over dinner. "We love you not because you control everything, but just because you're you." Martha was silent a long time. Then she rose, went to the cupboard, and pulled out a box of glue and the shards of that same plate. "Help me put it back together," she asked. They spent the whole night doing it. Each shard a piece of the past. Each crack a scar on the soul. But when the plate hung on the wall again, it wasn't ruined. Just changed. Marked by history. 2 months passed. Liza found work at a small landscape design firm. She smiled again. Even started seeing someone, a gardener from the local nursery. Martha grumbled at first, but one day, she invited him to dinner. And found no fault with him at all. David moved back to his hometown, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He began taking morning walks with his mother through the park. They walked in silence. But it wasn't the silence of before. It was the silence of peace. And one morning, as Liza set coffee cups on the table, Martha said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not leaving for good." Liza smiled. "I never could. Sometimes you just have to leave, to come back." Martha nodded. And for the first time in decades, she didn't correct her. Family isn't a perfect picture in a frame. It's a porcelain plate shattered on the floor. It's the pieces you can either throw away or piece back together. And when you do, the cracks remain. But it's those very cracks that make it real. Unique. Sometimes, to love each other again, you have to let everything break first.